By-law Hall, Norfolk, 11th November, 1943. On a desk in the new headquarters of Royal Air Force Bomber Command lies a single typed order, the formation of No. 100 Bomber Support Group under Air Commodore Edward Addison. Across East Anglia, telephone circuits map the positions of radar stations and fighter fields. Commanders expect incremental improvement, scattered jamming units, a few more night patrols. The reality will prove different. Within weeks, Mosquito night fighters will be vectored by ground controllers, reading precise radar plots, speaking standardized phrases that convert electronic blips into intercept geometry. By 1945, these aircraft will claim 258 enemy night fighters for 70 losses. The weapon is not a single device, but a system: radar, radio, and repeatable procedure executed at scale. The story begins with a command structure no one expected would change the mathematics of night air combat. West Raynham Airfield, Norfolk, 11th November, 1943. The establishment order for No. 100 Group rests on the operations desk, signed and sealed. Air Commodore Edward Addison, a veteran of Fighter Command, assumes command of a new organization whose remit combines electronic countermeasures, radio deception, and offensive night fighter operations under a single authority. Until this date, Bomber Command addressed jamming and intruder support through dispersed squadrons. The expectation was modest: better coordination, perhaps a few more successful patrols. The reality would be transformative. The group inherits several existing units. No. 192 Squadron brings signals intelligence and electronic monitoring, the so-called Y service that listen to enemy transmissions and mapped frequencies. No. 141 Squadron transitions from bow fighters to Mosquitoes, preparing for offensive intruder work. No. 169 and No. 85 Squadrons will follow. The first operational mission launches on the 16th of December, 1943, supporting a Berlin raid. 7 nights later, on the 23rd, the group records its first confirmed victory. The technology begins with infrastructure. Secure landlines connect radar stations to filter rooms and operation centers. VHF radio networks link ground controllers to airborne fighters. Standardized tasking procedures flow from group headquarters through sector control to individual aircraft. The system integrates what previously existed in fragments: warning radar, ground-controlled interception sites, airborne radar sets, and jamming equipment. Early operations reveal the doctrine. Controllers at AMES Type 7 stations use radar plots to vector Mosquitoes toward enemy night fighters approaching the bomber stream. The fighters carry AI Mk.VIII, airborne radar for terminal guidance, and Serrate receivers that home on enemy. Lichtenstein emissions. By month's end, operations record books show a pattern. Structure, not just courage or technology, drives results. One controller can manage multiple aircraft. One night's work can disrupt an enemy's entire defensive plan. The cause is organizational. Centralization enables repeatable procedures, controller scripts, altitude deconfliction, time turns. The effect is measurable. Intruder presence over German night fighter assembly points begins to show in reduced effective attacks on bomber formations. The mini-hook is documentary. Form 540 entries from December 1943, record contacts, vectors, and kills in bureaucratic shorthand that masks a tactical revolution. Sopley, Dorset, 1941 to 1944. Inside the operations building, nicknamed Happydrome by the crews, a planned position indicator scope displays a circular sweep. The controller watches the cursor mark, bearing, range, and altitude. A Mosquito climbs from its airfield. An enemy contact approaches from the east. The controller calculates intercept geometry and keys the microphone. Steer 090, Angels 20, target at 10 miles, slightly left. The expectation for British radar began with chain home. the early warning network that detected incoming raids and plotted them to sector operations rooms. Controllers could vector fighters toward general areas. Reality demanded more. The Type 7 radar, entering service in 1941, provided direct ground-controlled interception. Its rotating antenna and plan position indicator scope gave a 360-degree view to roughly 90 miles. Azimuth precision reached approximately 1.5 degrees. The frequency band centered near 209 MHz, later adjusted to 193 or 200 MHz. The procedure is human. The controller directs, plotters mark positions on a transparent board, height takers read altitude returns. Radio telephony discipline is rigid: brevity codes, speed gates, altitude blocks to prevent mid-air collision. The controller times the intercept. Too early, and the target may turn away. Too late, and the Mosquito burns fuel chasing. At a few miles separation, the controller hands off to the fighter's airborne radar. The pilot and observer complete the final approach. The system architecture connects Type 7 stations to group operations rooms via dedicated landlines. Data flows continuously. Raid plots from chain home, fighter positions from Type 7, height information from separate units. Deconfliction assigns altitude blocks: bombers at one level, friendly fighters above or below, intruders on crossing vectors. The controller can manage several aircraft simultaneously, an economy of force achieved by procedure rather than numbers. Technical manuals specify crew duties. The controller interprets the radar picture, assesses geometry, and issues vectors. The plotter maintains the tactical plot on a transparent overlay. The height taker refines altitude data. The communications operator handles multiple radio nets. Station logs record the duties in training notes. Standard GCI crew operating procedure and duties and procedure of the GCI controller. The cause and effect is compression. Real-time vectors reduce search time from hours to minutes. More contacts per sortie. Higher probability of intercept before the enemy reaches the bomber stream. The mini-hook is procedural: one controller, one radar, one night, and the mathematics of air combat begin to shift. Norfolk Airfields, late 1943 to spring 1944. A Mosquito NF Mk.XIII sits on hard standing as ground crew tests the AI Mk.VIII radar. The observer checks the S-band display, microwave frequency near 3 GHz, wavelength 9.1 centimeters. The set detects bomber-sized targets at 5 to 6 miles, sufficient for terminal guidance after the ground controller places the fighter within intercept geometry. The expectation for airborne radar was modest: finish the attack once the ground controller brought the fighter close. Reality expanded the role. The AI set became the final link in a kill chain that began on the ground. But AI was not the only tool. Serrate receivers homed on emissions from German Lichtenstein and later SN2 night fighter radars, allowing RAF Mosquitoes to track the hunters. Perfectos equipment interrogated the enemy's FUG-25A IFF transponder, the Erstling device, revealing direction and range when German fighters squawked their identification codes near airfields. Monica tail warning radar, initially installed in bombers for self-defense, became an inadvertent lure. German Flensburg homers tracked Monica emissions, guiding night fighters to British heavy bombers. When intelligence discovered the compromise, Monica sets were removed or switched off. The irony was tactical. A defensive measure became an enemy homing aid. The technology layered. Ground-controlled interception provided geometry, bearing, range, altitude. Serrate gave passive homing on enemy transmissions. Perfectos forced active emissions. AI Mk.VIII completed closure. Each device reduced search entropy. The enemy's own electronics became part of the RAF's sensor picture. Intelligence summaries documented German radar behavior, Lichtenstein frequencies, SN2 coverage, FUG-25A response patterns. RAF countermeasures evolved in parallel. Early Berlin period patrols in December 1943 validated the concept. Operations record books note contacts, vectors, and initial kills. The system is not yet mature, but the framework exists. By spring 1944, electronics, procedure, and trained controllers begin to produce repeatable results. The cause is integration. The effect is a shift from defensive patrols to offensive control of the night battlefield. The mini-hook is documented. Form 540. Entries from the period show increasing contact rates. Controllers refine vectors. Observers learn to distinguish AI returns from ground clutter. The intruder force is small, dozens of aircraft, not hundreds, but the procedure scales. The question is not whether the system works, but how much pressure it can apply. East Anglia, early 1944. The duty board in the operations room lists aircraft call signs, patrol sectors, and endurance times. Landline circuits hum between GCI stations and group headquarters. A controller sits before the plan position indicator scope, a phraseology card at hand. Turn starboard now, steer 180, Angels 25. Range 12 miles, dead ahead. The expectation was ad hoc control, experienced controllers using judgment and improvisation. Reality demanded codification. The RAF wrote scripts, vector headings, rates of turn, speed gates, altitude separations, termination rules. These became standard operating procedures, documented in training manuals and controller duty sheets. The language was precise. Angels meant altitude in thousands of feet. Buster meant maximum speed. Vector meant heading. Range decreasing confirmed geometry. The people are specialists. The controller interprets the radar picture and directs the intercept. The plotter maintains the tactical overlay, marking friendly and hostile positions on a transparent board above the plan position indicator scope. The height taker reads altitude returns from separate equipment. The communications operator manages VHF radio telephony nets, ensuring clear transmission and recording conversations for post-operational analysis. Station commanders coordinate with Bomber Command headquarters to align intruder patrols with main force routing. Technology supports procedure. VHF ground-to-air nets provide reliable voice communication at operational altitudes. Redundant landlines ensure continuity if one circuit fails. Recording equipment captures radio telephony exchanges, allowing training officers to review controller performance and refine techniques. Timing tables calculate intercept geometry for various speeds and turn rates. The controller's handbook lists duties. Assess the tactical situation, select the appropriate vector, issue clear instructions, monitor compliance, adjust as necessary, terminate safely. The cause is discipline. Procedural standardization reduces variance across crews and stations. New controllers learn from transcripts of successful intercepts. Errors are analyzed and corrected. The effect is efficiency. More intercepts per hour of patrol, shorter time from contact to kill. Reduced risk of friendly fire or mid-air collision. The mini-hook is organizational. The voice script itself becomes an offensive weapon, exportable to any station with a Type 7 radar and a trained crew. Documented perspectives appear in manual extracts and station logs. A controller notes the coordination required to deconflict bomber streams, intruder patrols, and returning aircraft. A plotter describes the mental workload of maintaining multiple tracks simultaneously. A communications operator recalls the clarity of standardized phraseology under pressure. The system is human, but procedure makes it repeatable. Foulsham, West Raynham, Little Snoring. May to August 1944. Operations record book pages list aircraft tail numbers and equipment fits, Mosquito NF, Mk.XII, and Mk.XIII with AI Mk.VIII, later models with AI Mk.X. Fuel and endurance figures are penciled in margins. enough for deep intruder legs over Germany and the Low Countries. The expectation for the Mosquito was defensive, protect British airspace from night raiders. Reality saw offensive deployment. No. 100 Group tasked Mosquito squadrons for intruder work over Luftwaffe night fighter routes and airfields. The aircraft combined speed, over 300 miles per hour, with two-man crew efficiency. The pilot flew, the observer operated radar and navigation equipment. Endurance windows allowed patrols of 3 to 4 hours, sufficient to cover multiple intercept opportunities. Technical specifics shaped tactics. AI Mk.VIII microwave radar detected bomber-sized targets at 5 to 6 miles under good conditions. Ground clutter limited low-altitude performance. The observer learned to distinguish returns, a solid blip for a heavy aircraft, a smaller echo for a single-engine fighter, ground scatter near hills or cities. VHF radio sets maintained tight communication with ground controllers. The system required coordination. The controller placed the Mosquito in geometry, the observer locked the AI. The pilot maneuvered for visual or radar-guided firing position. Documented individuals emerged from squadron histories. Wing Commander Brancy Burbridge accumulated multiple intruder victories, credited in operations record books and post-war compilations. Squadron commanding officers managed training, maintenance, and operational tasking. Controllers named in station logs became known quantities. Crews requested specific controllers based on past success. The human element remained central, but procedure and equipment provided the framework. The cause is integration. The right airframe, fast, long-ranged, stable, combined with the right sensors and ground script, created persistent presence over enemy fighter lanes. The effect is measurable. By summer 1944, squadron diaries show routine sorties with low RAF losses relative to contacts achieved. Some nights record multiple intercepts by a single crew. Other nights show contacts without kills. Geometry failed, or the target escaped into ground clutter. But the overall trend is positive. The mini-hook is asymmetry. Mosquito losses remain low. Enemy losses, as recorded in claims and later matched against German records where available, rise. The mathematics of night combat tilt toward the side with better control, not just better aircraft. The question shifts from can we intercept to how many can we intercept per night? Western Germany and the Low Countries. Summer to autumn 1944. Raid planning pairs. Window, clouds of aluminum foil strips dropped by bombers to confuse German radar, with dedicated RCM platforms carrying electronic jammers. Adjacent, a Serrate patrol matrix allocates time on station over known night fighter orbits and approach routes. The expectation was that German counter-tactics would neutralize chaff and jamming. Luftwaffe controllers might switch frequencies, increase power, or rely on visual sighting. Reality proved different. Serrate receivers, tuned to Lichtenstein and SN2 frequencies, converted enemy radar emissions into passive homing aids. The more the Germans transmitted, the easier they were to locate. Perfectos equipment interrogated Fuji 25R IFF transponders near German airfields, forcing emissions that revealed bearing and range. When Luftwaffe units responded by shutting off IFF to avoid exploitation, they degraded their own identification and increased fratricide risk from flak. Documented data appear in RAF RCM summaries and German night fighter unit war diaries. Luftwaffe reports complain of interference patterns, frequency congestion, and unreliable Erstling responses. Intelligence officers correlate RAF contact rates with periods of heavy jamming and Serrate activity. The pattern is consistent. Electronic countermeasures degrade the German radar picture. Ground controllers maneuver RAF fighters to advantage, and emission-seeking equipment finishes the intercept. The technology is layered. Window saturates enemy radar displays with false returns. Barrage jammers transmit noise across German control frequencies. Mandrel screens broadcast deception signals to simulate large raids where none exist. Simultaneously, Serrate-equipped Mosquitoes patrol the gaps, homing on any German night fighter that activates its Lichtenstein or SN2 set. The more the enemy radiates, the more predictable its geometry becomes. Archival fragments document the German response. Captured documents and post-war interrogations reveal confusion. Controllers cannot distinguish real bomber streams from window clouds. Night fighter crews report jamming on communication and radar frequencies. Orders to disable IFF near airfields reduce ground recognition. The operational effect is disruption, delayed intercepts, confused vectors, missed opportunities. The cause is electronic warfare integrated with fighter control. The effect is measured in reduced effective attacks on bomber streams during RCM-heavy nights. The mini-hook is paradoxical. The Luftwaffe's own emissions, its radar, IFF, and communications became targeting aids for the RAF. The more sophisticated the German night fighter system, the more vulnerable it was to exploitation. By autumn 1944, the Nachtjagd faced a dilemma: radiate and be tracked, or remain silent and miss intercepts. Bomber Command Headquarters and No. 100 Group Operations, 1944 to 1945. Monthly tables compile sorties flown, contacts reported, claims submitted, and own losses recorded. The numbers are stark. From 1944 to 1945, No. 100 Group Mosquitoes claimed approximately 258 enemy aircraft for 70 losses, a ratio approaching 4-to-1. The expectation from critics was small returns. Intruder operations were costly in fuel and crews. Contacts did not guarantee kills. Weather and darkness complicated every sortie. Reality delivered systemic effect. The claims must be treated carefully. Wartime tallies often exceeded confirmed German losses due to multiple claims on single aircraft or misidentification. Post-war reconciliation studies attempted to match RAF reports with Luftwaffe unit records, but gaps remain. The operational effect, however, is documented. Trend lines show reduced effective attacks on bomber streams during periods of heavy intruder activity. The method requires care. Claims are not losses. A Mosquito crew reports an enemy aircraft seen to explode or crash. Another crew reports the same event from a different angle. Intelligence officers cross-reference timing, location, and description to eliminate duplicates. German records, where available, provide ground truth. The confidence interval is wide, but the pattern is consistent. No. 100 group pressure correlates with Luftwaffe attrition at approach and egress phases. Bomber Command summaries pair intruder statistics with main force loss rates. Selected raids show reduced casualties on nights when RCM and intruders were active. The correlation is not perfect. Weather, target selection, and routing also affect bomber losses, but the signal is present. Group narrative histories compiled immediately post-war emphasize the disruption. Night fighter assembly delayed, attacks mistimed, crews forced to land early due to fuel or damage. The cause is attrition at the margins. The Luftwaffe cannot mass effectively if intruders disrupt staging and recovery. Controllers cannot vector efficiently if jamming clouds the picture. Crews lose confidence if every approach risks interception. The effect is cumulative. One successful intruder sortie may claim 1 or 2 aircraft. 1 month of sustained intruder presence bends the threat curve. The mini-hook is documentary. Spring 1945. Operations record books include nights with 0 intruder losses despite sustained presence over enemy airspace. The outcome is not anomaly, but repeatability. The question is no longer whether the system works, but whether the enemy can adapt before collapse. Germany and Japan. 1944 to 1945, with post-war surveys in 1945 and 1946. A United States operations. Analysis table lists Japanese early warning and GCI radar sets by type, frequency, and operational notes. The summary is blunt: patchy coverage, frequent breakdowns, unstable transmitter frequencies. Many sets observed in storage, even on the home islands, held as standby equipment rather than deployed. The expectation was parity. Major combatants fielded radar, therefore major combatants should achieve similar control capability. Evidence contradicts the assumption. Britain's national radar grid evolved from the pre-war Dowding system through continuous refinement. Type 7 GCI stations operated with high availability. Controller doctrine matured through documented procedures and training. The network depth, multiple overlapping stations, redundant communications, standardized phraseology, created a resilient system. Japan's radar development followed a different trajectory. Early warning sets provided basic detection, but ground-controlled interception remained limited. Technical issues plagued deployments. Frequency instability made calibration difficult. Component reliability suffered under tropical conditions. Maintenance chains lacked spare parts and trained technicians. The post-war survey documents these constraints in tabular form, noting which sets achieved operational status and which remained partially effective or failed. Germany faced different challenges. The Luftwaffe fielded capable radar, Lichtenstein, SN2, and Würzburg, but network integration lagged. The capture of a Junkers 88G1 at Woodbridge in July 1944 revealed SN2 and Flensburg to British intelligence, accelerating Allied countermeasures. Late-war German records note degraded communications, fuel shortages, and training gaps. Controllers struggled with jamming and window. Night fighter crews flew less frequently due to fuel rationing. The procedural maturity that characterized RAF operations, standardized scripts, redundant networks, continuous training, eroded under attrition and resource constraint. The cause is systemic. Britain invested in radar early and built doctrine around it. Controllers were specialists, not improvising from pilot ranks. Training manuals codified procedures. Maintenance kept equipment operational. The effect is comparative, repeatable intercepts at scale versus episodic success dependent on individual skill. The mini-hook is doctrinal. Post-war air defense manuals in Britain and the United States cite GCI as foundational, evolving into airborne early warning plus GCI in later decades. The surprise was procedural, not a secret device, but a scripted method executed across a national network. The question for historians is not whether radar mattered. It did, but whether procedure mattered more. Royal Air Force, Woodbridge. 13th July, 1944. Station log records the unexpected landing of a Luftwaffe Junkers 88G1, flown by a crew that mistook the airfield for a German's. Base in fog. Technical intelligence teams converge within hours. The aircraft carries SN2 centimetric radar and Flensburg passive homer, two systems the RAF knew existed but had not examined intact. The expectation was that German radar technology would remain secure. Aircraft shot down over enemy territory could be destroyed by their crews. Equipment recovered from crashes was often damaged. Reality delivered a gift. The intact SN2 set revealed operating frequencies, antenna patterns, and design details. The Flensburg homer confirmed its function, homing on Monica tail warning radar emissions. Intelligence officers photographed, measured, and tested every component. Within weeks, countermeasures accelerated. Pipe rack jamming targeted SN2 frequencies. Serrate receivers refined their tuning to exploit SN2 emissions with greater precision. Monica sets in. British bombers were either removed or switched off, eliminating the Flensburg target. The operational timeline compresses. Pre-Woodbridge, RAF intelligence inferred German capabilities from intercepts and partial recoveries. Post-Woodbridge, engineers had blueprints. Data document the shift. RAF contact and kill ratios in late 1944 show improvement. German night fighter unit diaries note increased jamming and difficulty maintaining intercepts. Controller confidence rises. Crews report that vectors lead to contacts more reliably when serrate cues and piper rack create confusion in the enemy formation. The intelligence shock unlocks faster countermeasure deployment. Number 100 group tactics tighten. The cause is hardware intelligence. Knowing the enemy's frequencies, power levels, and design limitations allows tailored jamming and exploitation. The effect is tactical advantage. German night fighters become easier to locate, harder to employ, and more vulnerable when they do engage. The mini-hook is doctrinal. Within weeks, controller phraseology cards and patrol matrices incorporate new jamming and angle-off assumptions, documented edits to standing operating procedures based on captured equipment analysis. Archival fragments trace the sequence. RAF intelligence summaries from July and August 1944 list SN2 parameters and Flensburg behavior. RCM deployment reports schedule piper rack installations across the intruder force. Station diaries for Woodbridge note the capture, the technical teams, and the security classification. The event is not isolated, it is a hinge. Before Woodbridge, the RAF fought blind against unknown systems. After, they fought informed. East Anglian GCI stations and patrol sectors, late 1944. A controller sits before the plan position indicator scope, stopwatch in hand. The Mosquito flies outbound on a patrol vector. The enemy contact, a German night fighter climbing toward the bomber stream, appears at the edge of the scope. The controller calculates range, bearing, rate of closure, time to intercept. The Yanai stopwatch ticks. At the precise moment, the controller keys the microphone. Turn starboard now. Steer 105. Target 12 miles, slightly right. The expectation was that final approach depended on pilot feel, experience, instinct, improvisation. Reality demanded doctrine. The RAF codified intercept geometry, cutoff versus stern chase, altitude separation to prevent collision, speed gates to control closure rate, termination rules to confirm identification before firing. Controller manuals listed the procedures in step-by-step format. Training emphasized repetition until the script became automatic under pressure. Technical details mattered. AI Mk.VIII microwave radar provided detection at 5 to 6 miles on bomber-sized targets. Ground clutter limited low-altitude performance. The observer learned to distinguish signal from noise. Closure rates varied with vector angles. A beam intercept closed faster than a stern chase, but required precise timing. The controller managed the geometry. The observer locked the AI. The pilot maneuvered for firing position. Radio telephony brevity reduced transmission time and confusion. Angels for altitude, Buster for speed, Judy for AI contact, Splash for kill. Documented procedures appear in air publication-style manuals. Standard GCI Crew Operating Procedure, Part 1. The controller assesses the tactical picture, selects the appropriate vector, issues clear instructions, monitors compliance, adjusts for evasion or error, and terminates safely with identification confirmation. The plotter maintains the overlay. The height taker ensures altitude deconfliction. The observer calls AI lock at a few miles. The sequence is repeatable. The cause is standardization. Procedural discipline shrinks the contact-to-kill interval and reduces fratricide risk. New controllers learn from recorded transcripts. Experienced crews refine techniques and pass them to training officers. The effect is consistency. Units with tight compliance to controller doctrine show the most consistent results over multiple nights. Poor compliance yields missed intercepts and wasted patrols. The mini-hook is organizational. The voice script, a seemingly mundane procedural element, becomes the critical weapon. The Germans have capable radar and aircraft. The British have radar, aircraft, and a codified script executed by trained specialists. That procedural edge, compounded nightly, determines outcomes. Berlin routes, Ruhr approaches, Low Countries airfields, December 1943 to spring 1945. Operations record books compile the nightly accounting, aircraft up, patrol sectors assigned, contacts reported, claims submitted, losses recorded. The entries are bureaucratic, tail numbers, times, grid references, but they trace a pattern. 16th to 17th December 1943. Number 100 Group's first mission supports a Berlin raid. Mosquito intruders patrol German. Night fighter assembly points. No kills claimed, but presence is established. 23rd to 24th December 1943. First confirmed victory. A Luftwaffe night fighter destroyed near the bomber stream. The method is documented. GCI vector, Serrate contact, visual confirmation, cannon fire. Late 1944 and early 1945. Patrols expand over night fighter circuits and airfields. The Nachtjagd expects to stalk bomber streams. Instead, Mosquitoes hunt the hunters at circuit, on approach, and during landing. German controllers must choose vector night fighters to intercept bombers and risk intruder contact or delay and miss the bomber stream entirely. Fuel shortages compound the dilemma. Aborted sorties waste precious petrol. Pressed attacks risk interception. Quantitative notes fill the record books. Patrol counts rise. 20, 30, 40 sorties per night during peak operations. Contacts accumulate. Some nights yield multiple intercepts by single crews. Other nights show contacts without kills as targets escape or weather intervenes. Nights with nil intruder losses appear repeatedly in spring 1945. Dozens of sorties without a single RAF Mosquito failing to return. The asymmetry is documented. Representative confirmations match RAF claims against German night fighter unit reports where available. Cross-referencing reveals overclaiming. Multiple crews sometimes reported the same destruction, but also confirms genuine losses. Luftwaffe war diaries note aircraft failing to return, unexplained losses near airfields, and decreased sortie generation during periods of heavy intruder activity. The cause is continuous presence. The Luftwaffe cannot ignore the bomber stream, so night fighters must fly. Intruders position over known routes and airfields, forcing German crews to run a gauntlet at their most vulnerable phases: climb out, circuit, and recovery. The effect is pressure. Sortie generation declines. Attack timing degrades. Crews grow cautious. The mini-hook is cumulative. By early 1945, documented fuel shortages intersect with intruder pressure. The threat curve bends downward not from a single battle, but from nightly attrition and disruption compounded over months. The question is no longer whether the system works, but how much longer the enemy can sustain operations under this pressure. Spring 1945. Bomber Command and No. 100 Group compile final summaries. The statistics are clear. Group formation, 11th November 1943. Type 7 radar parameters, 209 MHz, later 193 to 200 MHz, 360-degree coverage, practical control to roughly 90 miles. Claims, approximately 258 enemy aircraft destroyed. Losses, 70 Mosquitoes failed to return. The ratio approaches 4-to-1, treating claims as recorded without full reconciliation, against German loss records. The expectation from 1943 was marginal help. A few more successful interceptions, perhaps a slight reduction in bomber losses. Reality delivered systemic effect. The trend lines in Bomber Command statistical appendices show reduced loss rates on nights with heavy RCM and intruder activity, though the correlation must be stated with caveats. Target selection, weather, routing, and enemy strength also influenced outcomes. The operational effect is documented. Fewer successful attacks on the stream, night fighter sortie generation constrained, German controller confusion reported in captured documents. The cause is networked radar, disciplined radiotelephony, and standardized vectors. Each element alone is insufficient. Chain home radar without GCI cannot direct fighters to intercept. GCI without controller scripts yields inconsistent results. Controllers without airborne radar leave terminal guidance to luck. The integration, ground radar to controller, to VHF to airborne AI to pilot, creates the kill chain. The effect is measurable attrition at acceptable RAF cost. Group narrative histories emphasize doctrine. The method was repeatable. Train controllers, equip Mosquitos, deploy Serrate and Perfectos, integrate with Bomber Command routing, execute nightly. Losses occurred, 70 crews did not return, but the system absorbed casualties and continued. Replacement crews learned from recorded transcripts and training officers who had flown operational sorties. The learning loop tightened with experience. The mini-hook is doctrinal legacy. Post-war air defense absorbed GCI at scale as baseline, not special tactic. The United States and other allied nations adopted controller procedures and radar networks modeled on British experience. Airborne early warning plus GCI became standard doctrine, extending the concept from fixed ground stations to mobile platforms. The procedural innovation outlasted the specific equipment. Archival fragments trace the outcome. Bomber Command statistical appendices list monthly loss rates, cross-tabulated with RCM and intruder activity. Number 100 group narrative histories, compiled in 1945 and 1946, summarize missions, claims, and lessons. The documentary record is bureaucratic and precise, turning tactical events into historical data. 1945 to 1946. Post-war surveys and doctrinal publications. A United States operations analysis chapter on Japanese radar notes, frequency instability, component breakdowns, and limited GCI integration. RAF and United States Army Air Forces manuals formalize ground-controlled interception procedure, citing the British wartime experience as foundation. The lineage runs from chain home through Type 7 to post-war networks incorporating airborne early warning and improved radars. The expectation from enemies was parity. Germany fielded radar, Japan developed warning systems. Therefore, they should achieve similar control effectiveness. Evidence contradicts the assumption. Late-war German operations suffered from jamming, fuel shortages, and procedural erosion. Japanese radar networks remained patchy, with reliability issues and incomplete integration. The decisive British edge was procedural maturity, standardized scripts, trained controllers, redundant communications, and continuous refinement. Archival documentation is stark. The Short Survey of Japanese Radar, compiled by Operations Analysis in 1945 and 1946, catalogs each set by type, frequency, and operational status. The notes are repetitive, frequent breakdowns, unstable transmitter frequency, held in storage. Coverage maps show gaps. Maintenance logs reveal shortages of trained technicians and spare components. The physical equipment existed, but the system did not mature. Germany's position was different. The Luftwaffe had capable radar and experienced crews. Late war attrition, however, degraded both. The Woodbridge Capture in July 1944 exposed SN2 and Flensburg, enabling tailored countermeasures. Fuel rationing reduced training flights. Jamming and window clouded the radar picture. Procedural discipline slipped as experienced controllers were killed or reassigned. The system eroded under sustained pressure. The comparative perspective reveals the procedural gap. Britain invested in radar early and built doctrine around it. Controllers were specialists. Training was continuous. Maintenance kept equipment operational. The network was redundant. One station failure did not collapse the system. Adversaries lacked one or more elements. Japan lacked network depth. Germany lacked resources to sustain operations under attrition. The cause is integration over time. The effect is legacy. Post-war air defense doctrine in Western nations enshrines GCI as foundational. Training manuals teach controller procedures derived from wartime experience. Modern air defense networks, now digital, satellite-linked, and far more capable, still follow the basic architecture: ground or airborne radar, controller, data link, fighter, terminal sensor, weapon. The innovation from 1943 to 1945 was proving that repeatable procedure executed over a national radar network could determine the mathematics of night air combat. The final line is factual. Between 1943 and 1945, Britain demonstrated that ground control scripts, standardized and scaled, converted radar plots into systematic attrition. The weapon was not a device, but a method.